So no one is in front. Any question? हो गया? ये जरा एसी कम करवाओ. Any question? No question. No self study. Yes.
Sir, was Karl Popper a positivist?
Karl Popper was philosopher of science, and he advocated falsificationism. So he will come under non-positivist. Right? No, we have not discussed that. We have not discussed phenomenology and ethnomethodology. Still, we have to discuss. Right? Did you go through the book? So, did you understand something? Nothing. Little bit. And rest of the people, they did not go through the book. Right. So, critic of positivism first, philosophy of science, right? Second, idealist perspective or idealism, which is further subdivided into old or Kantian idealism and neo idealism. Right? This was in 18th century and this was in late 19th century. And the most prominent person in this was Max Weber, right? So, old or Kantian idealism, idealism is also a philosophical view, right, which believes in subjective consciousness of human being. Actually, this is a concept that distinguishes us from other animals and from dead matters. Right? We treat ourselves as different from them, and how we are different because we have that consciousness, and literally translating consciousness means free will, means your consciousness does not owe to any external factor, it is purely internal, right. So, this was old or Kantian idealism. Now, what you find in Immanuel Kant's writing, that frequently he has used this consciousness as divine. Consciousness as divine, right. We have already discussed little bit that whenever we do not know the reason, right, we are not sure what causes it for certain unknown forces, then we attribute the cause to the God, that God has done it or divine creation it is. And whenever you use the word God or divine, that means there should not be any doubt. If God has made something, that means it is doubtless. Anything that is described as divine, then it becomes doubtless, there is no suspicion, right. So, this old idealism is idealism in metaphysical sense, metaphysical sense. Meta means beyond, meta means beyond, and physics. So, it is beyond the description of physics or science. It cannot be described empirically, you need to go beyond that, right. So, this old idealism, it does not have any doubt, it considers it to be true, take it for granted, attribute the reason to divine, and therefore, there is no scope for any doubt in our mind whether it happens or not, right. I had mentioned a word, name of that person, Michael Sandel, and in that context I had said that philosophy does not solve any human problem, because every philosophical view has a counter philosophical view, right. But once a counter philosophical view comes, the conventions are questioned or unsettled. So, what was taken for granted is no more taken for granted, and doubt is casted on that previous philosophical view, right. This idealism is a view, philosophical view, and this idealist perspective or philosophical view, counter philosophical view is empiricism, right, empiricism, right, that is called positivism also. So, when positive philosophy was propagated and it asked for reliance on the sensory experiences, it asked that sensory experiences are only reality and divine could not be verified. That means what? This view, which was a conventional view at that time, got unsettled. It got unsettled, right. That means it will not have the same thrust in academics as it has earlier. If suppose I have a certain philosophical view and there are large number of followers of mine, right. So, my view would be taken for granted, but if a view opposite to my view comes into existence and it also gets popularity, people believe in it, then my view would not have the same thrust, same effect in the society as it used to have earlier. This is called unsettling the convention. So, this empiricism unsettled idealism, right, unsettled idealism, right. Now, whenever a view comes, initially we are in a euphoric mode. For example, when modernization of Europe was taking place, the whole of Europe was in euphoria, as if modernization is panacea to all human problem, right. You will find there is a philosopher, name I am forgetting right now. He had such an immense belief in the method of science or scientific method that he had said that once science blooms completely, then half an hour of work would be sufficient for our survival, well-being and a high standard of living. We have to work only half an hour and that would be sufficient. Secondly, he had also said lifespan would be infinite. Infinite means the 30-40 years that average lifespan was there, if it increases multifold, then lifespan would be quite high. So, in a way that philosopher had such an immense belief in the scientific method that he thought that human being would be living in absolute amity and there would be no problem. So modernization would free us of all our problem, whether it is biological problem or social problem, etc. Right? Recently, there was a study conducted in India, and it was found that average lifespan in last few decades had increased to around 10 years in India. Average lifespan means elderlies are living longer, but there was an appendix in that, but they are spending around 8 hours of this life as dependent. Right? So what happens? In rural area, if you fall sick, you die. Here, hospitalized, they charge around 3-4 lakhs rupees or whatever may be, and somehow they keep you alive, but you are no more able to lead a normal life. You spend a dependent life. Right? So, is there any meaning of such expansion in the span of life? Rather, it is more problem for the family members. Right? Besides, there are many new diseases that are coming. As industrialization grows, as modernization grows, mental health issue is aggravating to the great extent that 10 crore people in India suffer from mental illness. Right? So, generally when a new idea comes and people get convinced, they follow, then they are in euphoric mode. But as things move on, critic also appear. Critic also appear, and then they start looking at the loopholes in the theory. So, positivism was highly valued by sociologists or other philosopher, but as time moved on, a new breed of thinkers started emerging, intellectuals who started questioning this empiricism or empiricist philosophy. Right? This was through renewal in the renewal of interest in Kantian idealism. Kantian idealism. Renewal of interest in Kantian idealism. Can you? अच्छा, बाइलिंगुअल थोड़ा सा दिक्कत होगा. राइट? नियो आइडियलिज्म, रिन्यूअल ऑफ इंटरेस्ट इन कैंटियन आइडियलिज्म. फिर से इंटरेस्ट जग गया कैंट के आइडियलिज्म में. राइट? अब आइडियलिज्म की हिंदी मुझे भी नहीं पता है. आदर्शवाद. हाँ, दोनों में करें फिर तो 11 महीना लग जाएगा कोर्स खत्म होने में. राइट? कोशिश करूँगा. Right? So, renewal of interest in Kantian idealism. There was a renewal of interest in Kantian idealism by the intellectuals. Intellectuals की हिंदी क्या होती है? पढ़े लिखे लोग. चलो ठीक है, इंटेलेक्चुअल तो समझ में आता है ना. हाँ 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 हाँ, थोड़ा हिंदी में करें. कितने लोग हिंदी की कहानी की तरह? अरे सोशियोलॉजी है ये, कहानी थोड़ी है.
थोड़ा मिक्स करके ऐसा.
कभी कभी तो हिंदी बोल ही देता हूँ. टर्मिनोलॉजीज तो मैं हिंदी में नहीं बोल पाऊँगा. हाँ, क्या बात करते हो यार. अब मुझे पता होगा ना हिंदी में सारे वर्ड का डेफिनेशन तब तो. हाँ चलो, अब जैसे चल रहा है चलने दो. ठीक है, इसको समझो. प्रॉब्लम हो क्लास के बाद पूछ लेना. राइट? Idealism was a philosophy that was countered by empiricism, right. Later on, empiricism also underwent scrutiny, right. Loopholes were found, and because of the loopholes, renewal of interest in Kantian idealism took place. But यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है कि एक बार जब कन्वेंशन अनसेटल्ड हो जाता है, तो आई सेड द थ्रस्ट इज नॉट द सेम. The thrust is not the same. There are many people from Bangalore. I don't know whether they understand Hindi or not. The number of students that you are sitting here, outside more students are sitting. So that is another problem. So tomorrow I will start getting the complaint. Sir, you are teaching in Hindi, we are not understanding, right? So renewal of interest, because idealism is a contradiction of empiricism, right. But this idealism does not have the same thrust, same effect in the society, right. So here what you will find, and this you will not understand right now, we will be understanding it when we go for phenomenological explanation, right. What it says here, there is a word called bracketing, right. These neo idealists believed in subjective consciousness, but not without doubt. They believed in subjective consciousness, but not without doubt, क्योंकि यहाँ डाउटलेस था, ठीक है, पर इसने क्वेश्चन कर दिया तो डाउट क्रिएट हो गया, और इसने जो डाउट क्रिएट किया था, इट वाज ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ सर्टेन डेटा, सर्टेन एविडेंसेस. सो यू कैन नॉट जस्ट रिजेक्ट दैट criticism also. So here there was renewal of interest, they believed in subjective consciousness, but at the same time they had the doubt in their mind, right. To understand it, I'll give an example. आप सब लोग प्रिपरेशन कर रहे हैं सिविल सर्विसेज की, पहली बार कभी ना कभी तो सोचा होगा सीरियसली, ठीक है, सीरियसली. पहले तो बचपन में ही होता है कि ये आईपीएस है, इसके पास जो है टोपी है, बड़ी गाड़ी है, सुना है बहुत पावरफुल आदमी है, तो हमें भी इच्छा होती है कि हम आईपीएस. छोटे शहर के लोग जो है जनरली इस टाइप का अट्रैक्शन में रहते हैं. हम लोग भी छोटे ही शहर के थे, तो हम लोग में भी अट्रैक्शन था, ठीक है. द हाइएस्ट, द बेस्ट, द most powerful person and respected person in the district was the district collector and the IPS officer. So we were getting attracted, people get attracted towards that, but I am not talking about that. That attraction is there, but once you are in graduation, then you start seriously thinking, right. और जब आप सोचने लगते हो तो आपके दिमाग में दो बातें आती हैं, मेरा होगा, मेरा नहीं होगा. आया था दिमाग में बात? तुमसे पूछ रहा हूँ, आया था? अरे फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट में ही तो मैं तो कर रहा, जब डिसीजन ले रहे हो तैयारी करने का, उस समय की बात कर रहा हूँ. जब आप ग्रेजुएशन के बाद जब यहाँ पे आ रहे हो तैयारी करने के लिए, तो देयर आर मेनी थिंग्स एट स्टेक. योर टाइम इज एट स्टेक, योर मनी इज़ एट स्टेक, योर एफर्ट इज़ एट स्टेक. आपको लगता है फर्स्ट अटैम्प्ट ही दे रहे हैं, लेकिन फर्स्ट अटैम्प्ट में जब फेलियर होता है ना, तो बहुत डिमोटिवेशन होता है. सो यू मस्ट गिव योर फर्स्ट अटैम्प्ट ओनली आफ्टर थॉरो प्रिपरेशन. हाफ हार्टेड, विथ हाफ हार्टेड प्रिपरेशन यू शुड नॉट गो फॉर योर अटैम्प्ट्स, एटलीस्ट द फर्स्ट. यू हैव टू प्रिपेयर द स्ट्रेटेजी. एनीवे, एवरीबॉडी हैज़ हिज ओन फ्री विल, फ्री चॉइस, राइट. तो मेरा कहने का मतलब ये है कि जब आप पहली बार सीरियसली सोचते हो कि मुझे तैयारी करना है, तो आपके दिमाग में ये बात ज़रूर आती है, विल आई सक्सीड, विल आई नॉट सक्सीड, राइट. एंड देन व्हेन यू रैशनली इन्वेस्टिगेट, then what you find, it's really a very tough competition, right. The success is around 0.1% or 0.2%. Seriously, 5 lakh people appear in prelims and the maximum seat is 1000. So, it comes out to be around 0.1%, 0.2%. Means if 1000 people are appearing, only 2% would be successful. डर लग रहा है अब डर लग रहा है? नहीं डर लग रहा है? कितनी बार सुन लिया है, यूज टू हो गए, ठीक है, सही बात। तो मतलब डीमोटिवेशन नहीं हो रहा है, ओके, देन it has made my work easier, right? So you see all these things and then you try to arrive at a conclusion whether I will be successful or not, right? This is called duality of mind. Kant has given duality of mind. If you have one view in your mind, then मोबाइल चार्ज करने गए थे? अच्छा, मैं ही भूल गया क्या बोल रहा था। Duality of mind, right? So, हाँ, टेम्परेचर बढ़ाओ इसकी।
सर पिछली बार कम और कर रहे हैं 20 से 18 कर,
इसलिए मैंने बोला टेम्परेचर बढ़ाओ। एसी ठंडा करने वाला मशीन है ना, तो कम मतलब कम ठंडा करो। चलो आके करेंगे वो, राइट? सो डुअलिटी ऑफ माइंड, व्हेनेवर यू हैव वन थॉट इन योर माइंड, अ कॉन्ट्ररी थॉट कम्स इन योर माइंड, राइट? दिस इज कॉल्ड डुअलिटी ऑफ माइंड। होगा नहीं होगा, ठीक है? देन व्हाट हैपेंस, टेम्परेचर बढ़ाना है, घटाना नहीं है। पिछली बार घटा के चला गया था कोई।
26।
हाँ 26, ठीक, दैट्स आइडियल, राइट? सो नाउ यू आर इन डायलेमा, you are in dilemma, and if you remain in dilemma, you cannot dedicate yourself for the preparation, right? So here there is a term that is used, and similar to that phenomena you do in your life also. After investigation, after scrutiny, after analyzing, you decide, no, I will prepare, and then what you say, होगा कैसे नहीं? सो नहीं होगा वाली ऑप्शन आप खत्म कर देते हो। यू जस्ट रिमूव दैट ऑप्शन फ्रॉम योर माइंड। दिस इज कॉल्ड ब्रैकेटिंग, सस्पेंडिंग योर जजमेंट, सस्पेंडिंग योर जजमेंट, राइट? सो यू ब्रैकेट दिस and you believe, if I try, if I work, I will qualify, right? A similar phenomena here also neo-idealist, they agree with. What they say, they have a doubt, but that doubt is discarded. There is a doubt in mind, but that doubt is discarded, and there is a belief it is true. It is said they stop thinking whether it is true or not. They stop thinking whether it is true or not, right? Now they have this belief in subjective consciousness. Subjective consciousness, right? And this belief becomes the basis of growth of knowledge. As we had said in paradigm, we presume light travels in packet form or continuous wave form. We don't know whether it travels in packet form or continuous form, wave form. But you see, there are devices, different devices that are built on these two distinct assumptions. The same phenomena is taking place here. They believe in subjective consciousness, but not without doubt, but they suspend their doubt, and based on this assumption they start building the knowledge. This is called idealism in epistemological sense. Idealism in epistemological sense. What we had to write in our question of UPSC, what do you mean by neo-idealism? You had to write the original propagator of the idealist perspective or philosophy was Immanuel Kant, who believed in the subjective consciousness of the human being, right. This idea of subjective consciousness was contradicted by positivist philosopher, and they argued that consciousness is also objective, that is, it is product of external factors, right. But positivism also underwent critical scrutiny and loopholes were found. This led to renewal of interest in Kantian idealism, but this time this idealist philosophy was different from Kant. Whereas Kantian idealism was idealism in metaphysical sense, new idealism is idealism in epistemological sense. लिखना है? Write down. The original propagator of the idealist philosophy, अच्छा आप idealist philosophy लिखो या idealist perspective लिखो, बात बराबर है, right. Idealist philosophy is Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant, who believed in subjective consciousness, of human being. Subjective consciousness implies that our consciousness is not product of any external factor, be it material conditions, physical conditions, biological conditions, cultural conditions, or environmental conditions. Right? This idea of subjective consciousness, was questioned by empiricist, and positivist philosophers. According to positivists, human consciousness is also product of external factors. It is external factors, right. positivism underwent critical scrutiny. Positivism underwent critical scrutiny, and it was realized that all human behavior is not product of circumstances, This led to renewal of interest in Kantian idealism. This led to renewal of interest in Kantian idealism. But since Kantianism had lost its vigor, V-I-G-O-U-R, had lost its vigor due to positive philosophy, the idealism that emerged in the writings of Wilhelm Dilthey, Wilhelm Windelband, W-I-N-D-L-E-B-A-N-D, Henry Rickert, and above all Max Weber. What did you write? Idealism emerged in the, okay. Max Weber in modified form. This modified idealism is termed neo-idealism. Kantian idealism, full stop, then Kantian idealism was idealism in metaphysical sense. Kantian idealism was idealism in metaphysical sense, whereas neo-idealism is idealism in epistemological sense. The belief in subjective consciousness, becomes the foundational basis. The belief in subjective consciousness becomes the foundational basis for growth of knowledge about human society. जब भी नियो वर्ड यूज हो मतलब कुछ चेंज, exactly not in orthodox form, rather in a changed form.
Knowledge in human
Growth of knowledge about society, right? This description is relevant only when they ask distinguish between old idealism, neo idealism, or when they ask what do you mean by neo idealism as it was asked. Otherwise, in normal parlance, both are taken as same. So कभी neo idealist use कर देंगे, कभी idealist use कर देंगे, ठीक है, उसमें ज़्यादा सोचने की बात नहीं. जब पूछा जाए कि दोनों में डिफरेंस क्या है या पूछा जाए what is neo idealism, then only this is relevant. Since it has been asked, so we have to write. This was 20 marker question, I think. First part was what do you mean by neo idealism, right? Okay. Right. Now, we will not see about distinction between idealism and neo-idealism, simply say idealism, right. This idealism, that is belief in subjective consciousness of human being, has given many strands of sociological thought, right. For example, we have interactionism, we have symbolic interactionism, we have phenomenology, we have ethnomethodology and many more, right. We will be discussing here too phenomenology and ethnomethodology. Ethnomethodology, right. And this phenomenology and ethnomethodology criticizes positivism. It criticizes positivism, right. Phenomenology, if you see, there are two dimensions of it. As a philosophy, that is called as phenomenological philosophy, right. And from phenomenological philosophy, again this is not easy to understand. You have to take yourself to many hypothetical stage, right. Second is known as phenomenological sociology. This was a question in our exam. देखिए दो तरीका होता है पढ़ाने का, या तो बच्चों को खुश करने के लिए पढ़ा दीजिए, या वो पढ़ाइए जो एग्जामिनेशन में रिक्वायरमेंट है, ठीक है. कोचिंग इंडस्ट्री इज अ कमर्शियल वेंचर, राइट. सो देर आर मेनी एलिमेंट्स विच हैव वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट इन इट. आपके सिलेक्शन से उनको कोई मतलब नहीं है, तो आपको वही चीज़ पढ़ाएंगे जो सिर्फ आपको समझ में आ जाए. जो ज़रूरत है वो नहीं पढ़ाएंगे. तो मुझे क्या करना चाहिए? आपको खुश करना चाहिए या जो ज़रूरत है वो पढ़ाना चाहिए? हैं? जो ज़रूरत है वो पढ़ाना चाहिए, ठीक है. तो जनरली ये सोशियोलॉजी एज साइंस चैप्टर जो है इट इज़ वेरी डिफिकल्ट. When you go out, you must be meeting many of your friends who are studying in other coaching classes, right? Just compare your number of lectures on this chapter and the number of lectures that they have been delivered on this. And mind it, 1.5 to 2 question comes without fail every year. क्योंकि पता है उनको कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट में नहीं पढ़ाया जाता है, वो वही देते हैं जो नहीं पढ़ाया जाता है, ठीक है. सो डिफ़िकल्ट है और हर सब्जेक्ट में ऐसा है. देयर इज़ नो सब्जेक्ट वेयर डिफ़िकल्टी इज़ नॉट देयर, राइट. अगेन दिस फेनोमेनोलॉजी इज़ अ फिलोसफी which is difficult to understand, but I will try to make you understand, giving different examples. As far as philosophy is concerned, this is of Edmund Husserl. Edmund Husserl, Husserl. Edmund Husserl. He was a European philosopher, right? So, this philosophical view, phenomenological philosophical view, was developed by Edmund Husserl, and his philosophical view was further developed as a sociological view by Alfred Skuse. Alfred Skuse. ये पानी नहीं देता है, पानी दो और एक ये चेयर और दे दो मुझे, चेयर या टेबल कुछ भी, पानी रख दो यहाँ पे, ठीक है, ये चेयर दे दो मुझे एक। थैंक यू, क्योंकि मुझे बैठ के बताना पड़ेगा, नहीं कुछ रखने के लिए भी चाहिए, राइट। So, I will talk about animism first. I will talk about animism first, that is in our religion chapter. And the story of animism would help you understand phenomenology, right. There is a person called B. Tyler, E.B. Tyler, E.B. Tyler, right, and he wrote a book called Primitive Culture in 1871. He is a social anthropologist who wrote a book Primitive Culture in 1871, right. Those were the period when the intellectual environment was surcharged with Darwin's idea of evolution. डार्विन ने दिया था उद्विकास का सिद्धांत, राइट, याद आ गया। मैं 20 साल पहले हिंदी में पढ़ाया करता था, फिर नहीं हो सका तो छोड़ दिया, ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं, जो प्रॉब्लम होगा बाद में आके पूछ लेना, ठीक है। सो बायोलॉजिकल थ्योरी ऑफ इवोल्यूशन वाज प्रोपाउंडेड इन 1859, and immediately after that, within 2 years, Herbert Spencer propounded theory of social evolution when he wrote a book called First Principle in 1861, right. When you look at the theory of evolution, evolution has many concerns, this theory has many concerns, but one prime concern is origin. One prime concern is origin, how life emerged, how life originated, right. And then further, that how we got such a diverse flora and fauna in this world, right. So Darwin said that the first form of life was in the form of blue algae. First form of life was in the form of blue algae. And then he said about evolution process, there are certain laws. It says, evolution says it is our natural character to multiply. It is our natural character to multiply. And Darwin was inspired by 16th century philosophy, or not, he was not a philosopher, population theory by Malthus. Malthus had said that passion between opposite sex would remain same forever, right? And then he had said subsistence increases in arithmetic manner and population increases in geometric manner. There is a geometric growth, means in 25 years the agricultural products increase by the same amount, but population gets doubled, right. So, he had said about preventive checks, right, and punitive checks, right. So, if you do not prevent the growth of population, then punitive checks would, natural checks would come to play role, war, famine, etc., and population would be controlled, right. So, basically the idea is that the sexual attraction between male and female, right, and this is responsible for reproduction, right. It is in the case of human being, that was said by Malthus. He talked about the population of human society. Darwin brought that idea to other organisms also, and he said that it is not necessary that sexual attraction or sexual intercourse is the only way of reproduction, or sexual reproduction also takes place, right. Like amoeba, the moment it comes into existence, it gets divided into two to 4, right. So, that means what? We have, all organisms have this natural instinct to grow in size or multiply themselves, right. And when multiplication, growth of population takes place, size takes place, complexity comes, and complexity leads to differentiation. Complexity leads to differentiation. Differentiation means specialization of function. It is like division of labor, but it remains intact in our body. Like heart is playing a role, lung is playing a role, right, kidney is playing its own role, but they all are interdependent, right. So, evolution means origin, common origin. So, whatever living beings that you see on this earth, they all have emerged from blue algae. So, who is our ancestor? Blue algae. The remotest ancestor of even the human being is blue algae. There was a concern for origin of life and emergence of diversity of life, right. Whenever there is development in natural science, as we had said earlier, physics developed and physics inspired Auguste Comte. This biological theory of evolution was a revolutionary change as far as the creation of the organic world is concerned. Organic मतलब जिंदा लोगों का, जिंदा चीज़ों का, right? So, this altered the thinking. Before Darwin, it was said God has created all creatures, right? Later on we will be reading, till now all of us, we know God has created us, नहीं? डर लगेगा बाहर जाओगे तो, भगवान को क्वेश्चन कर दिया, पता नहीं सिलेक्शन होगा कि नहीं होगा. ठीक है. So, God has created us. Darwin says God has not created us. He does not believe in the entity of God. He says we all are product of a natural process that is known as evolution. Right? बाद में हम लोग पढ़ेंगे. God has not created us, we have created God. So, there is a person called Bergson, B-E-R-G-S-O-N. Bergson says, man is the machine for the making of gods. We will talk about Feuerbach when we read about Marx and others. Feuerbach also said, God, divine is the illusory product of reality. Divine is the illusory, भ्रामक उत्पाद है reality का, right? So, divine is the illusory product of reality. God exists till group of men are divided against group of men. And why group of men, two groups are in conflict? Because of a scarcity of resources, right. So, this was altered by this person, and it brought a revolutionary change as far as the thought in the society is concerned. Definitely any development in natural science, Darwin conducted research for more than 3 decades, and after that he concluded this. Within 2 years, in 1861, Spencer talked about social evolution. So, he talked about origin of society. अब उसने तो ओरिजिन ऑफ सोसाइटी बोल दिया, ठीक है। अब नए आदमी के लिए कुछ नया काम चाहिए ना, ठीक है। अगर स्पेंसर ने जो कहा वही टाइलर कहते तो टाइलर को कौन जानता आज, नहीं। सो he forgot about society origin. Okay, Spencer, you said about origin of society. He started looking for origin of religion. He started looking for origin of religion. He conducted a study, he did study, observed many societies, many tribal communities, African tribes, and after proper analysis, he came with this idea of animism, right. He says the first form of religion is animism, and first form of worship is ancestor worship. फर्स्ट फॉर्म ऑफ वर्शिप, ये तो आसान लग रहा होगा ना, ऐसा ही है बाकी सब। सोशियोलॉजी एज साइंस छोड़ के बाकी सब ऐसा ही है, ठीक है, इसलिए ज़्यादा घबराने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। थोड़ा सा सोशियोलॉजी एज साइंस में ज़्यादा पढ़ना पड़ेगा, राइट। सो ही टॉक्ड अबाउट ओरिजिन ऑफ रिलीजन एंड ही सेड दैट द फर्स्ट फॉर्म ऑफ रिलीजन वर्शिप वाज एंसेस्टर वर्शिप। हम लोग पिंडदान करते हैं ना, right. So, this is called ancestor worship, right. So, how did this worship form started? Animism, how did it start? So, he had observed a tribe in Africa, right. In that tribe, when a person dies, 2 types of funeral is performed. One is called as green funeral, another is called as dry funeral. ग्रीन फ्यूनरल, ड्राई मतलब कोई आदमी मर गया तो एक बार उसका श्राद्ध करते हैं और कुछ दिन के बाद एक बार और श्राद्ध करते हैं, ठीक है, फ्यूनरल। सो ग्रीन फ्यूनरल एंड ड्राई फ्यूनरल. Green funeral means you still have the hope of the person coming back to life, and when you lose all the hope, अब ये नहीं आने वाला है, ठीक है, तो ड्राई, राइट. सो ग्रीन funeral and dry funeral. What is the reason for this? What is the reason for this? He says that origin of religion owes to intellectual ability of the primitive man. Intellectual ability means thinking capacity. Thinking capacity. Like other organisms and dead objects, we are not like them, rather we have cognitive capacity, we have a thinking capacity, right. This is called human being is intellectual, right. When you come across some contradictory events, then you are in dilemma, then you start thinking about that and you try to know the answer of it or resolve the puzzle, right. This is called intellectual, for which Tyler is being criticized. Tyler is being criticized for considering primitive people as intellectual, right. Anyway, criticism is one thing, but he considers that primitive man was thinking being. Definitely their thinking ability was primitive in nature, not like us, right. So, what happened? If you see, he explains that there are different reasons for this origin of religion or worship, of ancestor worship. And what he says that it is because of the phenomenon of death and dream. Phenomenon of death and dream. राइट आदमी मरता है और आदमी सपने देखता है. अच्छा, आज की डेट में हमें पता है सपना देखते हैं उठते हैं अरे सपना है, नहीं, ये आदमी मर गया, उंगली लगाते हैं सांस नहीं आ रही है, नस पकड़ते हैं मर गया. राइट वैसा कोई मेथड नहीं था पुराने ज़माने में. ठीक है, उस समय एंशिएंट पीरियड लाखों साल पहले. एंड यू सी, इज देयर एनी डिफरेंस बिटवीन डेथ एंड स्लीप? वो मूवी देखी है यशवंत? While sleeping,
Mind is awakened.
so when I am sleeping, can you see whether my mind is awake or not?
That thing we know.
मैं वही कह रहा हूँ, दूर से देखने पर. ठीक है, there is a great similarity in death and sleep. ठीक है, अब एक बच्चा है वो सपने देखता है, हंसता है, उसको थोड़ी पता है सपना देख रहे हैं, वो तो जो नज़र आता है देखता है. ठीक है, बड़े लोग हम लोग हो गए हैं, जानते हैं सपने हैं तो उठ के कहते हैं अच्छा सपना था, डरने की कोई बात नहीं. वी एक्सप्लेन टू आवरसेल्व्स, राइट, बट यू हैव टू गो बैक टू द लेवल ऑफ दैट प्रिमिटिव पर्सन. इमेजिन, यही वह हाइपोथेटिकल सिचुएशन है. द फर्स्ट पर्सन हु रियलाइज दैट हिज father or some other member of the group is dead. इमेजिन तो कर सकते हो ना, ये भी इमेजिन कर सकते हो कि कोई भी तो एक आदमी होगा जो पहली बार सपना देखा होगा. इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू आइडेंटिफाई. इट इज़ वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू आइडेंटिफाई, बट यू हैव टू हाइपोथेटिकली प्रिज्यूम. Unless until you do such hypothetical presumption, you will not understand the concepts. For example, ऐसे है कि मेरा बेटा है, छोटा है अभी, 8-9 साल, 8th में पढ़ता है, तो कुछ कुछ वो बातें जब करता है तो मैं सोशियोलॉजिकली सोचने लगता हूँ. ठीक है, तो वंस वी वर ऑन द बेड एंड ही आस्क्ड मी, पापा आपकी और मम्मी की शादी किसने कराई? मैंने कहा कि तुम्हारे बाबा दादी ने. हम लोग यहाँ बाबा कहते हैं दादा को, बाबा दादी ने और नाना नानी ने. तो बाबा दादी की शादी किसने कराई? मैंने कहा उनके पापा मम्मी ने, बाबा के पापा मम्मी ने, दादी के. 2-3 जनरेशन पूछा, तो वो पहले वाले जो दादा दादी थे उनकी शादी किसने कराई? It was a valid question, right? So you have to hypothesize. There must be first person who got married. It's the same way when we ask the question whether chicken first or egg, अंडा पहले की मुर्गी. We don't know the answer, but if you don't take a stand, if you don't presume either chicken first or egg first, you cannot develop knowledge about their growth. वो आपको प्रिज्यूम करना ही पड़ेगा. वैसे पूछता हूँ तो कई बार क्लास में आते हैं, हाँ सर पता चल गया अंडा पहले, तो सामने वाला बगल में बोलेगा नहीं सर पेपर आया मुर्गी पहले. ठीक है, सो वी हैव टू हाइपोथेसाइज. दिस इज hypothetically presume. So similarly, we are hypothetically presuming there must be first person who identified death, and there must be some person who dreamt, right? As I am trying to explain it, that if you see from distance, there is not much difference between death and sleep. इसलिए मैं यशवंत मूवी की बात कह रहा था. वो अपनी वाइफ को तैयारी कराता है सिविल सर्विसेज के लिए, हैं, अब बहुत थकी हुई जब सो जाती है तो कहता है 8 घंटे के लिए मर गई, राइट. इफ यू रिमेंबर दैट, इफ यू हैव वॉच्ड दैट मूवी, यू कैन रिकॉल दैट सीन. वो गोद में उठाता है, वो सो जाती है, पढ़ा रहा है, वो सो जाती है, तो उसको उठा के बिस्तर पर रखता है, कहता है 8 घंटे के लिए मर गई, राइट. जस्ट टू से दैट at the outset there is great similarity between death and sleep, right. So when the person is sleeping, what happens? He moves, tumbles, और उस समय सब लोग सोए रहते हैं, तो आप भी सोए, वो भी सोए, थोड़ी देख रहा है कि रात में आप घूम रहे हो, क्या कर रहे हैं. सुबह आप भी उठते हो, वो भी उठता है. Some people sleep longer, but they also awake, right. So when a person dies, primitive people were in dilemma. Primitive people were in dilemma. इसको क्या हो गया, right. They were waiting for him to awake, come back to life, right. They waited for some time, but they had not lost the hope. They had not lost the hope. But definitely dead matter starts disintegrating, foul smell starts emerging, many things happen. So what they do? They take the dead body at a distance, right. And what they do? They surround the dead body with stones. They surround, like पिरामिड में मम्मी जो बनाते हैं, उसके पीछे भी एक लॉजिक ये भी है. Let us preserve the body, one day they will come back to life. Why? Because they are not able to identify the phenomena of death as we identify today. There is a hope that one day it will come back, right. So they are surrounded by stones. Why? So that wild animals do not attack them, and they come back. They go periodically to see आया कि नहीं आया, आया कि नहीं आया. Finally उन्होंने जब देखा कि ये तो आ ही नहीं रहा है, so they lost the hope. So this first funeral that they did, this is known as green funeral. And once they lost all the hope, it is dry funeral performed. अब ये वापस नहीं आएगा, because everything is there in your mind, right. You are convinced that person is gone for ever. खैर ड्राई funeral कर दिया, उसके बाद आके सो गया. वो भाई साहब सपने में आ गए. सपने में आ भी नहीं गए, उधम कूद भी मचा रहे थे. कभी पहाड़ पे चढ़ जाते थे, कभी पेड़ पे चढ़ जाते थे, वो क्रिस की तरह, ठीक है. 1 सेकंड में ऊपर चढ़ गया, 1 सेकंड में नीचे आ गया, ठीक है. कुछ भी कर, सपने में तो कुछ भी हो जाता है, राइट. वो उठा, अब उसको भी तो थोड़ी पता है, बच्चा सोता है थोड़ी पता है नींद में जा रहे हैं, सो जाता है. मैं नींद में था, मैं सपने देख रहा था. दिस वाज नॉट द रियलाइजेशन, राइट. सो व्हेन यू वेक अप and you were dreaming about that person and there is no one, अभी तो था कहाँ गया, अभी तो था कहाँ गया, right. And then also this person was doing many strange things in the dream, right. That created confusion and dilemma in the mind of the dreamer. I am presuming hypothetically the first man who had dreamt. Now definitely he will be in great confusion. A person who is continuously in confusion would turn mad. If clarity of thoughts is not there in your mind, then only you say this person has become insane. So whenever we are coming across any such puzzles, any such phenomena, then we need solution. We are in dilemma that needs to be resolved, right? So he will try to answer. जब आपके सामने भी डायलेमा आता है तो आप क्या करते हो? सोचते हो उसके बारे में, एनालिसिस, लॉजिक, रीजन एटसेट्रा यू गिव एंड यू ट्राई टू रिजॉल्व द डायलेमा.
ड्रीम आता क्यों
हैं?
वैसे सोशियोलॉजी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से ड्रीम ऐसा जनरल आता क्यों?
नहीं, सोशियोलॉजी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से ड्रीम नहीं आता है, वो बायोलॉजिकल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से आता है. ठीक है, उसके लिए डॉक्टर के पास जाना पड़ेगा. दिमाग के 3 पार्ट होते हैं, लेफ्ट लोब, राइट लोब, सेंट्रल लोब. ठीक है, आगे वाला पार्ट, पीछे वाला पार्ट. ठीक है, कॉन्शियस माइंड, सब कॉन्शियस माइंड. कॉन्शियस माइंड स्लीप्स बट सब कॉन्शियस माइंड कीप्स ऑन वर्किंग. तो ये सब डॉक्टर बताएगा. ठीक है, ड्रीम क्यों होता है. सो नाउ दैट पर्सन he tries to resolve himself. Maybe he may not get the answer of his own query. तो जब आपको अपना सवाल नहीं समझ में आता है खुद, तो क्या करते हो? टीचर्स के पास आते हैं, दूसरे के पास जाते हैं, फ्रेंड्स के पास गए, कलीग के पास गए, मेंटर के पास गए, टीचर के पास गए, जो कहना है कह लो. ठीक है, कुछ टीचर भी नहीं समझा पाते होंगे. फाइनली एक टीचर ने कुछ कहा, आपको समझ में आ गया. Right? So this is because it's not whether the teacher is saying right or wrong. It is only you are convinced of his explanation. You are convinced of his explanation. Right? So he was trying to resolve the problem to himself. He could not. He approached many persons. उसमें एक आदमी बहुत चालाक निकला. बोला नहीं जानता है, हमारे शरीर के 2 पार्ट होते हैं, एक ये शरीर, दूसरी आत्मा. बॉडी एंड सोल. बॉडी डाइज, सोल नेवर डाइज. बोला सही बोल रहा है, कन्विंस हो गया. बॉडी डाइज, सोल डज नॉट डाई. वी कैनॉट सी सोल. राइट? तो फिर उसने पूछा, भैया ये उठापटक क्यों कर रहा था इतना? स्ट्रेंज थिंग्स, वी कैन नॉट डू इट. सो ही सेड बिकॉज ही इज वेरी पावरफुल. सोल इज पावरफुल. कहते हैं ना गीता में, नैनन छंदंती वगैरह क्या क्या है. न आग जला सकती है, न हवा सुखा सकती है, ऐसा ही कुछ है ना श्लोक. हाँ, शस्त्र से कुछ काट नहीं सकते हैं. तो दिस टाइप ऑफ कंसेप्ट, this soul, anima meaning soul, this soul is very powerful. Now if you come across an entity which is very powerful, what do you expect? मान लीजिए आप जा रहे हो, आपके सामने बहुत मोटा तगड़ा पावरफुल आदमी आ जाए, खड़ा हो जाए, तो क्या सोचोगे आप? There is two possibility. If you are coming across an entity which is very powerful, either it can be benevolent for you or it can be malevolent for you. या तो आपके लिए अच्छा करेगा या आपके लिए बुरा करेगा. अच्छा करेगा तो बल्ले बल्ले, कुछ सोचना ही नहीं. बुरा करे तो लड़ तो सकते नहीं उससे, तो क्या करोगे? नहीं, स्केप का आप पावरफुल है, स्केप कहाँ कर पाओगे? आपसे तेजी दौड़ता है वो. खुश करने की कोशिश करेंगे. वी विल ट्राई टू अपीज. We'll try to appease. And how to appease that person? You remember what he liked in his lifetime, because that is the only tangible way to understand his expectations. उसको खुश करने का वही एक तरीका है, right? So you start offering it those things. This offerings, this appeasement is worship, right? So first we started worshipping our ancestor. This is what this person E.B. Tyler says. अब थोड़ा और भी आगे बता देता हूँ. किसी ने कहा होगा, पंडित ने. उसी को जिसने कहा आप विश्वास कर लिए, उसको पृष्ठ मान लिए. हैं? यही तो रीजन दिया था कि एक तो शारीरिक वो फिजिकल बॉडी है, दूसरा आत्मा है जो न दिख सकती है न छू सकते हैं आप, ठीक है, वो एक अदृश्य चीज है। उसने बोला, उसकी समझ में आ गया, इससे आगे छोड़ो। उस समय के आदमी को वो कन्विंस हो गया, मैंने इसलिए कहा था कन्विंस्ड हिम, एंड देन एंसेस्टर वर्शिप स्टार्टेड, राइट। नाउ व्हाट हैपेंड, दिस पर्सन वेंट नियर अ रिवर। अब आज की तरफ पॉल्यूटेड रिवर तो था नहीं, उस समय नीट एंड क्लीन रिवर था। वो ऐसे झुका, देखा अंदर भी कोई है। योर इमेज, राइट। हमें पता है इमेज है, प्रतिबिंब है। प्रिमिटिव मैन को थोड़ी पता था इमेज है। वो कई बार फेसबुक पे देखा होगा, एक आईना लगा हुआ है, उसके सामने एक छोटा बच्चा जो है खड़ा है, वो देख रहा है, अरे, फिर वो पीछे जाके देखता है, फिर आगे आके देखता है। यू माइट हैव वॉच्ड ऑन फेसबुक दैट, परेशान है वो बेचारा कि इधर से दिखता है, उधर कहाँ चला जाता है वो, राइट। सो यू आर ऑल्सो क्यूरियस about that person, your image. Either you get scared, you try to touch, and you don't get anybody. So it's not my ancestor who had the soul, I have also soul. Similarly, shadow, you want to disengage from your shadow, but you are not able to. So all these things gives a new idea. It's not only that ancestor who died, he had soul. Rather, everything around us possesses soul. So we started worshipping everything. So what started with ancestor worship, we started worshipping every object that was present around us, whether it is hill, whether it is tree, whether it is river, whether it is animal, or so to say any other thing. Means believe in multiplicity of souls, right. This is the beginning of polytheism, believe in many gods, right. Further, Tyler says that religion evolves from polytheism to monotheism. Religion evolves from polytheism to monotheism. The whole story I told you, it took a lot of time. It's relevant also later on, we will be reading about them. But main thing was that we have to hypothetically presume, right. Then how explanation of a person becomes the explanation for all members of the group. This is what we say priest, right. One who explained, convinced not only one person, majority of the members got convinced by his logic and his explanation. So he becomes priest, messenger of God, and he got highest status in the society. इसलिए ब्राह्मणों को हाईएस्ट स्टेटस होता था उस सोसाइटी में। आज की डेट में वो स्टेटस साइंटिस्ट को है। ब्राह्मण तो अब गरीब हो गए, कोई ब्राह्मण है यहाँ? अब तो गरीब हो गए, गरीब हो गए नहीं। आफ्टर शेड्यूल कास्ट द इंसिडेंस ऑफ पॉवर्टी इज हाईएस्ट अमंग ब्राह्मण्स इन इंडिया। क्यों? बाद में, राइट। सो hypothesizing, presuming that first person who witnessed death, first person who dreamt of that dead person, and then how we developed certain kind of knowledge. We are not interested in whether that is right or wrong, but that is there in our common sense. That is there in our common sense even today. That's why when you go to NASA or you go to ISRO, you will find Tamilian Brahmins putting ash on They are very religious person. They are very religious person, right? So, science and religion is not contradictory to each other. That is what Einstein had said, science without reason is lame and religion without science is blind. क्वेश्चन आया था यूपीएससी में, सोशियोलॉजी के पेपर में, कमेंट, right? Okay. So, did you get that? Now we come back to phenomenology. What is phenomenology? Phenomenology is a study of working of mind, how our mind works, how our mind works. So, you can write this. Phenomenological philosophy is concerned about internal workings. Phenomenological philosophy is concerned about internal workings of human mind. This was also a question. Phenomenological and ethno-methodological critique of positivism. Internal workings of human mind and the way humans classify and make sense of the world around them. Make sense of the world around them. Make sense of the world around them. हिंदी में बोले तो हमारा दिमाग कैसे काम करता है, ठीक है? अच्छा, what is the means of our mind establishing contact with the outside world? What are the means? कैसे हमारा माइंड जो है वो बाहरी दुनिया से कनेक्ट कर पाता है? सेंसेस से. So phenomenologists also believe, they say, the only means to come in contact with the outside world is our senses. Right now, according to phenomenologists, according to point wise form में लिख लो, according to phenomenologists, individuals come in contact with outside world only through their senses. Only through their senses. They come in contact with outside world only through their senses. There is no other means, right? See what positivists say, sensory observation, and what these people are saying, sensory observation. So they are not contradictory. They are not contradictory. That is why the term non-positivist and anti-positivist have went into disuse. Nowadays post-positivism word is used, because non-positivist, non-word and anti-word, it projects an image that whatever positivists say, these people completely reject them. But here in this phenomenological philosophy, they are not rejecting. They are saying, yes, you are true, that we come in contact with the outside world only through our senses. Now we have 5 senses. हम एक ही की बात करते हैं अभी, our eyes. Remember the first person, just imagine, not remember, imagine the first person who had vision. Hypothetically presuming उसको आँख हो गई, उसने देखने की एबिलिटी उसमें आई, उसने देखा, तो क्या नजर आएगा उसको? कुछ गेस कर सकते हो? कुछ चीज चल रहे हैं, कुछ हरे हैं, कुछ पीले हैं, नॉर्मल आई, कुछ काले हैं, एट्सेट्रा एट्सेट्रा। कुछ बढ़ रहे हैं अपने आप, कुछ नहीं बढ़ रहे हैं, यही दिखेगा ना, राइट। These sensory experiences are meaningless. These sensory experiences are meaningless. Meaningless. The face value of the sensory experiences are meaningless. मैं उसको बता रहा हूँ कैसे समझ में आएगा, अभी पहले लिख लो। Face value of sensory experiences are meaningless. Face value of sensory experiences are meaningless. Right? It doesn't have any meaning. मूव कर रहा है, काला है, पीला है, हरा है, खुद से बढ़ रहा है, खुद से छोटा हो रहा है, यही सब है, बट उसका कुछ मतलब समझ में नहीं आता है। टू मेक इट मीनिंगफुल, द पर्सन स्टार्ट्स अटैचिंग मीनिंग टू इट। राइट डाउन। Sensory experiences are made meaningful by defining them in certain way. By defining them in certain way. अच्छा, यहाँ पे नहीं समझ में आया फेनोमेनोलॉजी, तो फिर कहीं नहीं समझ में आएगा। मैं ये भी बता देता हूँ, अगर मैं नहीं समझा पाया फेनोमेनोलॉजी और टालकट पार्सन्स, तो फिर कोई नहीं समझा पाएगा। समझ में बहुत लोगों को मेरे से अच्छा होगा, बट समझा नहीं पाएगा। ये मैं एश्योर करता हूँ आप लोगों को। ठीक है, होता क्या है, what we do on the basis of certain common attributes, we classify the things. जैसे we identify certain attributes and then we say this is living, this is non-living, right? So what we do, we classify our experiences into phenomenon. Right down. Sensory experiences are made meaningful. Sensory experiences are made meaningful by classifying them into phenomenon on the basis of common characteristics. ठीक है, जैसे कहते हैं ये लिविंग बीइंग है, इसमें लाइफ है। these people, these organisms have life, and this is dead. So what is the basis of calling that such objects have life, they are living object, and this is dead? Movement, right? Growth, right? Movement, growth, consciousness तो दिखेगा नहीं बाहर से, वो सेंसरी एक्सपीरियंस नहीं होगा। आप अभी क्या सोच रहे हो मैं जान सकता हूँ, और मैं क्या सोच रहा हूँ आपके बारे में जान सकते हो? नहीं। That's what Emile Durkheim says, consciousness is internal, not observable from outside. For a scientific sociology, therefore, meanings and motives are irrelevant. जो चीज़ बाहर से नज़र नहीं आए उसके बारे में क्या सोचना, गेस तो कभी भी गलत हो सकता है, right? Now, how do you know this chair does not have consciousness? है कोई ऐसा आपके पास औजार, टूल which can identify that this doesn't have consciousness. You may say, मैं इसको पैर से मारता हूँ, ये रिएक्ट नहीं करता है, तो जो रिएक्ट ना करे उसमें कंससनेस नहीं है, ये आपका डेफिनेशन है. इट इज़ योर डेफिनेशन, यू आर डिफाइनिंग इट. नहीं? So we are defining what is living and what is non-living. We say, as you said, movement, growth, breathing, etc. These are the characteristic feature which leads us to classify the objects as living being. And those who do not manifest those attributes, they are called as non-living. ये वही पहला हाइपोथेटिकल आदमी है. उसने देखा, पहले खुद से जवाब जानने की कोशिश की, नहीं मिला, किसी और के पास गया, तो एक आदमी ने कहा कि ये है. राइट? राइट डाउन. Based on common attributes, a distinction is made between animate and inanimate objects. A distinction based on common attributes, a distinction is made. अच्छा, ये toughest है. ये समझ में आ गया तो सोशियोलॉजी समझ में आ जाएगा. A distinction is made between animate means living, inanimate means non-living. Animate and inanimate objects. Animate and inanimate objects. ठीक है, हमने क्या किया अभी यहाँ पे? What did we do? We just laid down certain parameter. And these parameters are the figment of our mind's imagination. Right? That's why many times you might have heard this statement, we see what our mind says us to see. We see, और अन्ना हजारे के शब्दों में, जो आदमी जिस कलर का चश्मा लगाता है उसे वही दिखता है. We see what our mind says us to see. Right? So here what mind is doing? Mind is attaching meaning. Mind is defining our sensory experiences. So mind is playing role in defining the sensory experiences. This is called phenomenology. We classify the things into phenomenon. Living and non-living are phenomenon. Are you getting it? समझ में आ रहा है? दिमाग जो है वो बताता है, वो मेरा एक आदमी के पास अभी हूँ मैं सिर्फ, बाकी लोगों को छोड़ दो. सिर्फ one hypothetical person, he is observing and then he is defining it in certain way. Right? If he is able to convince others of his definition, then society would have a common definition of phenomena. तो हमें लगता है कि ये एब्सोल्यूट ट्रुथ है. एक्चुअली में एब्सोल्यूट ट्रुथ नहीं है. It is defined by a person and convinced by many. Right? क्योंकि आप देखोगे फिलोसफी में there are many philosophy, like in Hindu philosophy, कण कण में राम है. राम means what? That consciousness, that God, that chetna. Right? So even the dead objects possesses consciousness. This is there in many religious philosophy. If somebody is not reacting, that doesn't mean he doesn't feel pain. Right? So that's why we say consciousness is about to every object. यही तो लिबनिज ने कहा था. This was that philosopher Leibniz had said that this world, this universe is composed of discrete entities. Each of them is capable of independent existence, means they have an independent consciousness. Right. So, what we are observing, our mind is defining in certain way. Now, write down further. Further, animate objects were classified into mammals and non-mammals. Into mammals and non-mammals. Mammals are further divided into breeds, sorry, species. Mammals are further divided into species. Species, I think present pronunciation is species, right? हमारे ज़माने में species होता था, जैसे हमारे ज़माने में शेड्यूल होता था, आजकल स्केड्यूल होता है. अच्छा, आजकल NI को नाई, I को AAI प्रोनाउंस करते हैं, राइट? तो डिवाइन को कैसे प्रोनाउंस करेंगे? डाइवाइन. See what happens actually. Pronunciation by elite class, when it is emulated by masses, elites suffer from an identity crisis.
It is just like Sanskritization.
नहीं, संस्कृताइजेशन की बात नहीं. संस्कृताइजेशन में तो एम्यूलेट कॉपी कर रहे हैं, नहीं. हाँ, कॉपी एक्सेंट की बात कर रहे हैं. एक्सेंट जो है, जैसे मैं शेड्यूल कह रहा हूँ, अब आप कुछ और कहते होंगे. जैसे हमारे बिहार में जो है, हमें बचपन में याद है, हम लोग स्टेशन कहते थे, जितने अनपढ़ लोग थे टीसन कहते थे. है कोई बिहार का? है टीसन? अनपढ़ लोग जो है टीसन. अब वो टीसन कहें तो हमें ना समझ में आए, हम स्टेशन कहें तो उनको समझ में नहीं आए. ठीक है. फिर धीरे धीरे जो है कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ हुआ, उन्होंने ही कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ किया. अच्छा, इसको टीसन नहीं स्टेशन कहा जाता है, तो ये स्टार्टेड टेलिंग स्टेशन. Once they knew that this is a station, I suffered from an identity crisis. ये तो मेरी तरह हो गया. How I am different from them? So I started saying station, not staton. This happens. This happens. It is the elitist crisis that leads to changes in pronunciation. Otherwise, there is no reason for that schedule that was pronounced by everybody is now being called as schedule. हम लोग विटामिन कहते थे, अब वाइटामिन हो गया है, डाइवाइन नहीं हुआ है. Right? So, elites always try to develop certain symbols to induce a fatalistic attitude among the masses. Since I cannot pronounce vitamin, so I have a defeatist approach, fatalist attitude in me, and therefore competition gets reduced. We will be talking about status group formation. Status group formation, mechanism of monopolistic closure, social closure or social exclusion. All these things we will be studying later on. Right? So, animate into mammals, non-mammals, mammals into species and species into breeds. अब जब तक मैं species सीखूंगा तब तक पता चला कुछ और बोला जा रहा है इसमें. हमारे बच्चे हमें रोज सिखाते हैं. ब्रीड्स, ब्रीड्स, हाँ वही. breeds, right. So, this way what, on the basis of common attributes we are classifying it, right. And when this, what happens, as I said, one is defining something in that way and other are getting convinced, other are getting convinced, right. So, what happens, this develops into form of a shared knowledge, right. Write down. This classification develops into shared knowledge, right. And here is a very important point. What is shared knowledge is considered as absolute truth. एक ने डिफाइन किया, बाकी कन्विंस हुए और उस नॉलेज को शेयर कर लिया। वो जिसने डिफाइन किया वो सही किया या गलत किया ये कभी नहीं जान सकते हैं। एंड शेयर्ड नॉलेज इज कंसिडर्ड एज ट्रुथ, रियलिटी। This is what phenomenologists are saying. That's why phenomenological sociology says that sociology of a sociologist is no different from the common sense of a man standing on the street. What is very important in this phenomenological philosophy is the role our mind plays, or how there is mediation of mind in our sensory experiences in building our knowledge. यही हो रहा है ना, एक आदमी डिफाइन कर रहा है, अब वो तो बता नहीं सकते ये जिंदा है, ये जिंदा है कि मरा हुआ है, ये तो हमारे बेसिस पे है ना। और वो जो है दैट बिकम्स अ फाउंडेशनल बेसिस फॉर ग्रोथ ऑफ नॉलेज। बेस्ड ऑन दीज एट्रीब्यूट्स वी बिल्ड आवर नॉलेज, राइट। राइट डाउन। हसल बिलीव्ड, हसल वहां लिखा हुआ है, Husserl believed that the process of classification is not objective. The process of classification is not objective, rather product of human mind, and therefore cannot be evaluated, in terms of whether it is true or false, in terms of whether it is true or false, right? Are you getting it? So, what to do here? We cannot say, here we do bracketing. Write down further. In trying to secure knowledge, humans had to bracket reality and common sense. Bracketing means putting them as it were. Bracketing means putting them as it were, and then forgetting about their true nature, and forgetting about their true nature. Right? This is what I had said neo-idealism. You had doubt, but if you constantly in doubt, you cannot proceed further. So, you have to take a stand. This is called assumption, and then based on that assumption, you take the assumption for granted and then you move on. That assumption becomes the foundational basis of your knowledge. Right? So, bracketing, this is by one individual. This is by one individual, right. When it becomes, it is shared by all the members, then it becomes, it is called stock of knowledge. Now, sociology starts. Write down Alfred Skuse. Alfred Skuse. Alfred भी लिखा हुआ है Skuse, right. Gradually, members of a society start sharing the knowledge through various processes of socialization, through various processes of socialization. And develop, in the words of Skuse, and develops, क्या लिखे हो?
Develops in the
and develops
यार वो सब चीज़ यहाँ नहीं लिखा हुआ है, जल्दी जल्दी लिखा करो.
socialization and develops in the
पूरा पढ़ो तब समझ में आएगा.
so gradually members of society started sharing the knowledge through various process of socialization
And?
in the
And develop, in the words of Skuse, a stock of common sense knowledge. A stock of common sense knowledge. Right? This shared knowledge, it is common sense knowledge. This shared knowledge enables humans to interact with each other. This shared knowledge enables humans to interact with each other. Right? Now, this common sense knowledge is not fixed and unchanging. This common sense knowledge is not fixed, right? कोई एक पागल आ जाएगा बाद में, बोलेगा नहीं तुम लोग गलत बोल रहे. पागल ही तो कहते हैं उसको. One who speaks different from what common people say is called insane. He has his own independent thinking. He defines the things in his own way, right? So, down this common sense knowledge is not fixed and unchanging. Rather, under constant modification, in the course of human interaction. In the course of human interaction. this common sense is not fixed and unchanging, rather under constant modification in the course of human interaction. देखिए हो सकता है वो कॉमन सेंस नॉलेज एक जनरेशन से दूसरे जनरेशन में एज इट इज ट्रांसफर हो जाए, राइट, एंड मे बी दैट one person interprets this common sense in a different way, and that becomes gradually as shared knowledge, right. So, from this point of view, humans create an illusion of order and stability, an illusion of order and stability in society, whereas actually it is jumble of individual experiences, that have no clear shape or form, See, what we are talking about, critique of positivism. What positivism says? Society follows a pattern. There is an order in society. These people are saying there is no order. Order is there because we believe in the order. We have an illusion of order. The day a person comes who is not into this illusion, rather in some other illusion, the so-called order will change into another order, right. This is phenomenological sociology, which says how stock of common sense knowledge develop, then how these common sense knowledge are shared by the members of the society, and how this shared common sense knowledge becomes the basis of interaction, where people understand each other and are able to interact with each other. But this common sense knowledge is not fixed, it can change, because anyway another person who is interpreting the things, his mind is working, right. So, he says that positivists claim that there is order and stability in society. He says no, there is no order in, we have an illusion of order in society. Till we have this illusion, we follow the order, right. Now, the second is ethno-methodology. Next is ethno-methodology. 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 Methodology. Methodology भी देख के लिख रहे हो, right? It was propounded by Harold Garfunkel. Harold Garfunkel, Garfinkel. Harold Garfunkel, right? If you see this word ethno-methodology, it is composed of three words: ethnos, method, and logos. That means roughly, if you translate, the study of method used by humans or people. The study of method used by humans or people. Ethnos means human being. हम लोग कौन सा मेथड अपनाते हैं, ठीक है, while interpreting the things around us. Basically, they ethnomethodologist, and particularly this person, is talking about criticizing positivist. And what is that criticism? Positivists believe in order in society. Pattern, a pattern, a law is there, a nature is there, and this pattern is followed by the people, right? And then what happens? They have a belief in order, and after this belief in order, they go into the field and collect data. They go in field and collect data, right? What happens in this? We had used earlier the word selective biasness. If you have belief in order in society, definitely your observations would be biased. You would be recording only those data that supports your hypothesis, right? And it is suffering from biasness, means data is biased, and you are saying a biased data as the basis of an objective truth. I don't. Garfunkel extends Skew's idea. Garfunkel extends Skew's idea of illusion of order in society, illusion of order in society, right? Positivists believe in order generates systematic biasness, during research and the collection of data. There exists a selective biasness. Where only those data are recorded, that supports the hypothesis of order. भाई आपने पहले बिलीव किया ऑर्डर में, दिस इज बिलीव इन ऑर्डर, भाई ऑर्डर है सोसाइटी में. जैसे ही आप कन्विंस हो गए, यू विल बिकम बायस्ड. With a biased mindset, you are entering into field, collecting the data. Definitely, you will be recording those data that supports your hypothesis, as we had said in verificationism, right? Means the data that you have collected is biased, and a biased data is represented as a claim for objective truth, right? When we study Durkheim's theory of suicide, at that time we will be discussing about John Atkinson, and his analysis of suicide is from ethnomethodological perspective. So, basically it is what there is a official position in European societies that is known as coroners, C-O-R-O-N-E-R-S, and these coroners, they have the duty of recording the deaths, data on deaths, and not only recording, investigating the data of death, but also classifying them into natural death, murder, accident and suicide, right. And for that they are trained how to identify a case of death as suicide or as murder or something else, right. For example, it is just for the sake of understanding, suppose there is a cylinder blast in a kitchen, right, and in that a lady has died, right. Now, if the doors and the windows are closed, it may be defined as a case of murder, and if they are open, it may be defined as a case of accident, right, and in some other condition it may be defined as suicide. So, there is a preconceived understanding of the circumstances. भाई आपको भी ट्रेनिंग मिलती है तो ट्रेनिंग में क्या होता है, you are taught a preconceived understanding. If it is something like this, declare it as such. If it is otherwise, declare something else. So, basically Atkinson's what he does, he criticizes the claim of objectivity of data by Emile Durkheim. We will see that later on. Today we end here, phenomenological and ethno-methodological criticism. Tomorrow we will be moving forward and we will be talking about critical school, right, feminist school, and then further we will be talking about postulates of positivism, role of values in sociological inquiry, etc. Thank you.
I have a question about sociology.
Come,
Optional is
come.
also sociology.
Come. Your optional is sociology. So, what do you want to know?
I want to know that what is the basic need of sociology. The NCRT is only need that.
No, you start with NCRT, but NCRT is not sufficient. Read Orange Harlambus,
Columbus book.
orange one, old one.